So if you want to be a scientist in the comments down below, go at it. But I also disagree. Me, who got a C in her GCSE science exams, I'm here telling the government what to do. Broadway is closed because of coronavirus. I'm not Boris Johnson. I don't know. Never did I ever think that I would do a video on a worldwide health crisis. Here we are, friends. Broadway has closed. Right. So today I was going to do a video about my upcoming trip to New York to go to Broadway to see Beetlejuice. Yeah, that's all changed, hasn't it? Me and my friend Will have been planning for a few weeks that we would go to New York. I've been planning this for quite a while, actually. I've been thinking about it for ages, and I thought, you know what? I have to see Beetlejuice. I have to see it. I just have to. And I was like, I have to see it with the original Broadway cast. First Sophia went, and I was like, ooh, guess that's not gonna happen. And I was like, great, Presley's amazing. And I was like, great, I'll get to see Presley. And then she was like, I'm going, and I was like, ooh. And then coronavirus hit, and I'm like, so yeah, basically, 1 week ago today, me and my friend Will booked our flights. Now, the flights were like flexible because obviously everything that's happened. In the UK, it's like nothing's going on, really. Schools are open, you know, mass public gatherings are still going on. This was before the Italy lockdown, so we were like, it's fine. And then in the last week, it's like the apocalypse. Whilst I was also planning my trip, I was contacting people and trying to get some work while I'm out there. I contacted Lindsay Pierce, who is playing Elphaba at the moment on Broadway, and I was like, hey, I've loved you from the Glee project, and now you're on Broadway, please can I interview you for my channel? And she replied, and she was like, I'd be totally down for it, but at the moment, we've stopped backstage tours, we're not doing stage door, so yeah, it's not gonna be possible while you're in town. So it's like, that's sad, but fair enough. And I thought, I wonder if Broadway will still be open. Broadway doesn't close. How wrong I was. As far as I can find, this is the longest that Broadway has ever been planned to be closed. So there was a flu pandemic in 1918 and some theatres closed, but not all of the Broadway theatres closed, so it isn't classed as Broadway's closed. In 1975 there was a 25-day closure for a musician strike, and then in 2007 there was a stagehand strike, but nothing as long as this current 30-day one. Yeah, so basically earlier this week I saw Stephanie J. Block and Gideon Glick. They were both like really publicly begging the Broadway League and the New York governors to close Broadway because of coronavirus. Oh my god, I've not even said this is all because of coronavirus. I'm sure you're aware of that. And so basically the reason why Broadway theatres can't close down Broadway on their own free will is because if they make the decision to close it, then they're not covered by insurance, whereas if it's coming from the government, then they have to close because obviously it's a government sanction. So the governors of New York were discussing it. At first they were like, maybe we should just have minimum audiences so you can go and see the show, but everyone has to sit 2 meters away from each other. And it's like, but what about the actors? Because actors have to touch each other, kiss each other on stage 8 times a week. It's like a breeding ground for it. Once one person gets sick, everybody gets sick. So when the Governor Cuomo, I think his name is, which is a great name by the way, he then made the decision on Thursday to ban public gatherings of over 500. So to qualify to be a Broadway theatre, they have to have at least 500 seats. So all of Broadway is closed. So it's going to be closed until the week commencing April the 12th. So the thing that confuses me is, like, as I was saying about Broadway being closed for insurance purposes when it comes through the government, what does that mean for actors? I did reach out to someone who is currently on Broadway, and I know a Broadway usher, and I have tried to get in contact with them. I wanted to get this video up as soon as possible, but if I do hear from them, then I will insert a section. Yeah. Now this is me coming from a different time, but to say that actually I heard back from her and she gave the most incredible information in its own whole other video about Broadway ushers and what is happening to them and what life is like as a Broadway usher. It's fascinating, so keep an eye out for that. Back to the video. If the insurance covers them, what is included in that policy? Is that just for you are still insured to like keep your theatre? Is it you're insured for the people people who normally work in that theatre. People don't seem to have given like a really specific answer as well on social media. I know a lot of people have been calling it fun employment, which normally we actors would call when you aren't in a show. But if you're in a long running show, like for example, if you're in Wicked and you are in a year-long contract, Wicked is a show that makes a lot of money. It will probably be able to weather this storm. Are they now not paid for 30 days? Or are they? Andrew Feminella, who is a casting director for Broadway, came out and said on Instagram, what if shows that were not just recouping the money that was spent on them, but have been earning profit for like the last however many years? What if they put together even just their revenue from like the last week? It could be used as like an emergency fund and like relief for theatre performers everywhere. There are people who will be out of a job now who will have been in those shows before as well, so maybe that's like a good idea. I don't know if that's something that's possible, but he said, for example, grosses, that's the gross money taken from Hamilton, Wicked, Lion King, Dear Evan Hansen, Book of Mormon, Phantom and Chicago last week alone totaled over 8.2 million. That's for 1 week. If they just put that together, that could be used for so many people to help them through a month. I think that's a great idea. Even if it takes half that much money to run the shows, that would still be $4 million in profits to help the community of people who helped make those shows successful and profitable. That's what I'm saying. The people who they're helping are people who may have previously been in those shows, as I say, people who have just supported the Broadway community and gone to see those shows, and I think it's time that we give something back. As he said, that's just a drop in the bucket for the profits these shows have been lucky enough to enjoy over the years, and maybe it's not all their profits from this last week, maybe it's a percentage of their profits, but Phantom opened in January 1988. It's hard to believe that over 32 years they've made enough money that the producers can now do something to help out in the right way. We talk a lot about theatre being a community. Let's let the people in a position to help out show everybody what that really means. I think that's really inspiring and I think that's great. I love it. So the band started on Thursday of last week at 5 p.m. So there was a matinee going in for Moulin Rouge, and as the audience were going in, they were told, no, we're not going ahead with the show, because apparently one of the cast members suddenly felt really unwell and then everybody else wasn't feeling well as well. I said well so many times. That's terrifying. Something that is really sad is that Broadway had 16 openings that were planned from now up until the 23rd of April, which is the Tony deadline for submission for the Tonys for this year. Of those 16 shows, how many are going to open now? The thing is that Broadway is expensive and they're gonna have spent loads and loads of money, and now suddenly they don't open. What is the decision? Can they bankroll it until they open and try to make that money back? But even when Broadway reopens, will people want to go to the theatre? Will that be the first thing they want to do? A lot of people are going to lose a lot of money in this crisis if we are all locked down for so long. People aren't able to go to work, people aren't making money, companies are losing money. Is the first thing you're going to do go and support a brand new Broadway show? I'm not sure. Me? If I was in New York, definitely. That's where I like to spend my money, on shows and in theatre. But a lot of tourists and things, are they going to want to? It's a very expensive pastime. You know, what does that mean for brand new shows? I think that's the thing that has been like so overwhelming when you think about the work that it takes to get to Broadway and then to open on Broadway is such a huge thing, and it's such a scary risk. Another thing is that Broadway has a stop clause, so basically theatre owners can put a stop clause on shows. So like if they don't make a certain amount of revenue for 2 weeks in a row, then they can just be kicked out of the theatre. Do people want to go to more public gatherings? I know that I've got some theatre tickets booked up for in the coming weeks and I'm really nervous to go, and I'm not generally a super nervous person about things like this. Like, I mean, I booked a trip to New York a week ago because I was like, I'll be fine. Here I am panicking. Thank God I've got toilet rolls in. I know that a lot of shows have been cancelled, not just Broadway as well. I know that a lot of off-Broadway and US tours are being cancelled. I know the Mean Girls tour, for example, has had some of its dates cancelled. But what about all of the people who work in the theatre? I think that's the thing that's so worrying. Like, what about ushers? They work on a 0 hours basis. Who is paying their wages? Like in the UK, for example, statutory sick pay is £95 a week. That doesn't even cover my mortgage. message. It's really scary to think about what's going to happen to those people. It's not to be taken lightly. There is the Actors Fund that people can donate to, and that helps actors and stagehands on Broadway. And it's sad. I feel like New York has lost a part of its soul when Broadway isn't running. Feels like heavy in the US. In the UK, it feels like nothing's going on. I've had a lot of people message me actually and be like, what's happening with the UK? And I'm like, I'm not Boris Johnson.
I don't know.
I don't think he knows, to be fair. Personally, I am of the opinion that I think it should close. I know there's this whole herd immunity thing from the government. I'm not gonna like get into the British government's plans for this as opposed to other people's, because I've got my own opinions, but at the end of the day,
I'm not a scientist.
I don't know. I'm just talking about my own opinions. I'm not a healthcare professional. In my opinion, I would have things closed because I have lots of friends who work in theatres, and for example, I know that a lot of theatres aren't issuing refunds at the moment in the UK, so for the West End and regional theatres, and a lot of the time anyway, they don't issue refunds. Now the issue here is, I know someone who spoke to a customer who said, I'm coming to this show, I have all of the signs of having coronavirus, I've been told to self-isolate, I can't come to the theatre, it's a lot of money, can I have a refund? The theatre said, no, you can't have a refund. The customer said, okay, well I'll come in and infect everybody then. What are people supposed to do? As much as he's being a bit of a dick for being like, well, I'll just go and infect everybody, I wouldn't do it myself, but I understand why people are being like that, because if there are no government sanctions in place, then who's to say that he shouldn't do that? Do you know what I mean? Because this self-isolating thing is what people are losing money. You know, self-employed people, you have to self-isolate, you have to stay at home for 14 days or 7 days or whatever. You lose all that money, every penny counts. So if you're self-isolating because the government have told you that you should self-isolate, but you have no support from a monetary standpoint, then every penny counts. Anyway, you're just hearing me rant now.
I'm not going to get political.
I know someone else who works at a regional theatre where there is a UK tour at the moment. Yesterday there were nearly 10 covers on and 2 actors had to go off mid-show because they're so sick. Is that from coronavirus? Nobody knows because nobody's being tested. I'm not going to get political. I know another friend who works at a theatre. They put the disposable gloves on while they're checking people's bags because they're touching people's belongings that they've been touching all day. Their manager said, don't wear those gloves, they look unprofessional. That is a health issue. If things aren't being passed down from government officials, companies are like, I don't care, it's business as usual. Surely that is like negligence? Anyway, she did say that another manager was like, I don't care what that person says, wear the gloves, protect yourself. But what I'm saying is a lack of protection from everyone. Ooh, it's scary. Like for example, the theatre where cast members are really sick. What happens to the stage doorman who's been taking the keys to all of the dressing rooms that everyone's been touching, and what happens to the prop person? It just feels so bad. I know that Anne and Juliet at the moment are performing concert style versions of the performance. Got so many people off sick. I don't know if it's coronavirus linked, but if people are that sick and immune systems are down, then maybe we should be supporting them. I presume that that is why the West End isn't following suit over Broadway. I know that Sarah Bareilles and Gavin Creel have cut short their run in the West End. I don't think that's because of fears of coronavirus, but I know that obviously the US has declared it a national state of emergency, so flights and things are being limited. It's all a bit up in the air. I know a lot of shows have said that they're not doing stage door, so is the next step to cancel performances? I don't know. The scary thing is that a lot of people are saying about coronavirus, like, it only affects old people. That still matters. Old people still matter. And also that's not true because it affects younger people with respiratory issues and lung issues and whatnot. And also apparently there is evidence to show that if you have it, even though you might sound fine and it looks as though you are recovered, there can be scar tissue left on your lungs, and I'm sorry, that affects performers. So I think it is imperative that we make strong steps jobs to look after performers and to just look after the theatre community and people generally. I know it's this herd immunity thing, so if you want to be a scientist in the comments down below, that's fine, you know, go at it. I get it, but I also disagree. Me, who got a C in her GCSE science exams, I'm here telling the government what to do. I think if we do close things, it is scary, as I've said a million times. For performers, it's so scary. I know of a friend who was on a European tour that's been cancelled, and he's now like, yeah, I'm unemployed, I have no money. But there are people who are going through real trauma in the world, and there are people who are losing their families, and they're incredibly sick. And yeah, it's gonna be really hard to not have money and to have to scrape by on everything, but we're the lucky ones if we're not unwell at the minute. The way that he described that, I think, is just the best way that anyone's put it, because I know so many theatre people and so many people who are on 0 hours contracts and are struggling, but if we're all dead, then what's the point anyway? I think if things are closed though, I think that people should not take it as an opportunity to be like, oh well, it's closed, I'm not gonna do anything. There is always an audience out there online, and I'm not saying that everyone should start a YouTube channel or whatever, but if you wanna still fulfill yourself creatively, you know, film yourself singing, put it up online, share it with your friends and your family. If you're a dancer, create dances and put them on TikTok. I'm not saying it so that you can gain internet clout or whatever, but if you feel the need to do something for an audience, or you just want to do something creative, do that. Paint a picture, do some colouring in. If you need to be creative, there are so many opportunities to do that. Things could be a lot worse. I think it's really interesting as well, there has been discussions about Broadway HD doing something with maybe New York Public Library. So New York Public Library, they film basically all of the Broadway shows for their archives. There is a discussion about whether producers will link up with Broadway HD to put them together so that people can still consume theatre and pay for a subscription that goes to theatre. There are some performances, there's a show called Tony Stone, Culture Clash Still in America, Schoolgirls, or the African Mean Girls play. They've done recordings of the performance that they are intending on sending to people who have bought a ticket for the show. I think that's a great idea. The thing is that the majority of theatres do not offer you a refund policy. They sometimes will swap the performance to another date, but a lot of shows won't give you a refund. If there was maybe a way of like a live stream from that particular evening performance. If somebody phones up and they say, I'm sick, I can't come to the show tonight, and they say, great, here's a link where you can watch the show in a live stream, so that the theatre is still retaining the money for the seat that could have been filled by somebody else and retaining that money, and then that person is also getting that theatrical experience. Maybe this will encourage people to look at other ways of virtually sharing shows. I mean, the thing is that Broadway HD, for example, Daddy Longlegs is a musical that was put on Broadway HD that it was watched in 135 countries by over 150,000 people. That is the equivalent of being sold out for 2.5 years in the size of theatre that it was originally booked in, which was an 130 seat theatre. It increased sales for tickets for the show and also sales for cast albums and things. So is that a move that we should be making? I don't know. This is all a discussion. Does that also eradicate bootlegs and people making money through YouTube and AdSense revenue of putting up shows? This is a different discussion. We're talking about Broadway being closed. So anyway, honestly, who knows? Who knows? I think that the Broadway community and the theatre community as a whole is very strong. We are used to things not going well. We're used to things being cancelled. I think people are going to come back stronger, belting higher, living the best lives on Broadway. I will be rescheduling my trip. I just hope I get to see Beetlejuice. I don't think I will. I'm so sad. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you found it interesting maybe. I hope that you enjoyed it. Also, I noticed that like 80% of the people who watch my videos aren't subscribed to my channel. You snakes! No, I'm joking. But if you would like to subscribe, obviously it's free and it makes me feel real nice and warm and fuzzy inside, and that's nice. Please, everybody, keep well. Please wash your hands. Don't touch your faces. Just keep well. I'm thinking of you. I'm sending my love. I'll see you soon. Bye.